In a tense moment that shattered the calm of a hospital changing room, the Sandie Peggie case erupts. A fiery confrontation between the NHS Fife nurse and her employer after she claimed she was harassed for objecting to sharing a women's changing room with a transgender doctor. Investigations intensify, testimonies clash, and the national debate ignites over women's spaces, identity, and workplace rights across Britain's healthcare system. Then suddenly, the tribunal drops a ruling that sends shockwaves across social media. Part of Peggie's claim is upheld as harassment, while the rest is dismissed. But the explosion is already echoing, and the question now is, who was wronged, and who crossed the line? Watch the clip. Before starting, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and write your opinion in the comments.
And Ben this week.
Now, the nurse at the centre of a trans tribunal against NHS Fife in Scotland has been cleared of all gross misconduct allegations this morning.
Yes, this is Sandie Peggie. She was suspended after complaining about having to share a changing room with transgender medic Dr. Beth Upton at the NHS Fife hospital, where they both work. Let's get the latest from Tony Maguire, who is there in Scotland. Tony.
Yeah, good morning. Well, today is actually the start of the second diet of these workplace tribunals, with Sandie Peggie taking on Dr. Beth Upton and NHS Fife. Now, we learned earlier this week that NHS Fife has paid upwards of £220,000 to defend this case, a case which you might think has, taken a bit of a battering, especially since that Supreme Court ruling earlier in the year. Now, the first diet, 10 days worth of hearings, took place in February, and it's now expected a further 11 days of hearings will commence from today. Of course, this case, this tribunal, all hinges on a series of interactions between Dr. Beth Upton and Sandie Peggie, with Sandie Peggie feeling increasingly uncomfortable about sharing a changing room in the hospital where she worked, at a health board where she worked for almost 30 years. These interactions became more and more strenuous until Miss Peggie was suspended. Now, earlier today, that suspension came after a bullying claim from Dr. Beth Upton, which led to accusations of gross misconduct. But earlier this morning, Miss Peggie's barrister, Margaret Grubben, came out of the tribunal and delivered this statement to the press.
Yesterday evening, my client Sandie Peggie received confirmation from Fife Health Board, her employer, that following a disciplinary hearing, none of the gross misconduct allegations against her had been upheld. This follows a disciplinary hearing on the 25th of June, which considered 4 gross misconduct allegations, 2 relating to patient care failures, 1 of misgendering Dr. Upton, and 1 relating to her encounter with Dr. Upton in the female-only workplace changing room on Christmas Eve 2023. Sandie is relieved and delighted that this 18-month-long internal process has concluded and cleared her of all allegations. Thank you.
Sandie, what's your reaction?
Well, certainly that was the end of that statement, but it kind of shows now that Miss Peggie has only got to focus on one thing, her and her legal team, on whether or not she was wrongfully terminated or suspended from her role where she worked for almost 30 years. As I said, this is day 1 of a further diet of 11 tribunal days here in Dundee.